And I don't think either of those two could have been able to cope. They'd been anywhere else. And that was the only good thing that happened, was that they were there.
The British monarchy has weathered centuries of storms, wars, abdications, scandals, and constitutional crises. But what is quietly unfolding behind the gilded walls of Buckingham Palace right now may be one of the most personal and consequential battles the modern royal family has ever faced. And at the center of it stands one woman who has never once flinched from a fight. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal. Tough, disciplined, and utterly devoted to the institution, she has served for over 5 decades, and is reportedly drawing a hard line. And this time, the target of her fury is someone very close to the throne, Camilla's daughter, Laura Lopez. The question gripping royal insiders and palace watchers alike is this: has Laura Lopez, a private citizen with no royal title and no official duties, been using Balmoral Castle, the most sacred and symbolically loaded private estate in the British monarchy, without proper authorization? And if Princess Anne has anything to say about it, the answer to that question will not be settled quietly over tea. To understand why this story matters so deeply, you first need to understand what Balmoral Castle actually represents. Located in the Scottish Highlands and spanning approximately 50,000 acres of breathtaking terrain, Balmoral is not a Crown estate property. Unlike Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, which are technically owned by the nation and managed on behalf of the monarchy, Balmoral is privately owned. Prince Albert purchased the estate in 1852 for Queen Victoria at a cost of £31,500, and it has remained within the personal possession of the royal family ever since. When Queen Elizabeth II passed away on September 8, 2022, at Balmoral itself, the estate transferred privately to King Charles III as part of his personal inheritance. That distinction is critical, because Balmoral falls outside parliamentary or constitutional law. Disputes over its use and access are governed by private property rules and family arrangements. There is no official charter. There is no published rulebook. There are traditions, expectations, and deeply held assumptions, and when those assumptions are violated, there is no formal institution to appeal to, except, perhaps, a court of law. Princess Anne's connection to Balmoral is not merely sentimental, though sentiment certainly plays a role. This is the estate where she spent childhood summers with Queen Elizabeth, where she learned to ride horses across the Highland landscape, and where her mother took her final breaths. For Anne, Balmoral is not real estate. It is memory, identity, and the very soul of what the monarchy means to her. She has watched her brother King Charles open the castle to public tours for the first time since 1855, a decision she reportedly has complicated feelings about, and she has observed, with growing unease, the expanding footprint of Camilla's family within royal spaces that were never meant for them. Laura Lopez, Camilla's daughter born in 1978, has largely kept a low profile throughout her mother's remarkable ascent from controversial royal companion to queen consort. She works in the arts, is married to Harry Lopez, and has generally avoided the spotlight that follows her stepfather's family. But low profile does not mean invisible, and in the tightly controlled world of royal property and protocol, presence without permission is a serious matter. Sources familiar with palace dynamics have suggested that concerns about Laura's use of Balmoral, specifically the nature, frequency, and authorization behind her visits, have been circulating in royal circles for some time. The core allegation, as it has been discussed among those close to the family, is that Laura treated access to Balmoral as an informal entitlement rather than a formally granted privilege. In a family where unwritten rules carry the weight of law, that distinction is everything. Princess Anne, according to those who know her well, does not deal in gray areas. She has spent her entire life operating within a strict personal code. The monarchy is a public institution built on duty, discipline, and earned respect. It is not a lifestyle brand. It is not a social club for those who married into the family or were born to someone who did. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopez hold no royal titles. They perform no official duties. They have made no formal commitment to the crown. In Anne's view, the privileges of royal life, including access to its most sacred private spaces, must follow obligation, not just bloodline or marriage. When that principle appears to have been violated in a place as personally significant as Balmoral, Anne's response is not a quiet word over dinner. Her response is documented, formal, and on the record. The broader context surrounding this dispute makes it considerably more charged. In early 2026, it was revealed that Camilla had transferred ownership of her private estate, Ray Mill House in Wiltshire, to her children Tom and Laura. She had purchased the property in 1996 following her divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles, and it had long served as her private sanctuary away from royal obligations. The transfer, registered quietly without any official announcement from Buckingham Palace, raised immediate questions among royal finance observers and constitutional commentators. Two schools of thought emerged. The first framed the transfer as straightforward inheritance tax planning, a sensible legal strategy given that, under UK law, properties transferred more than 7 years before death are generally exempt from inheritance tax. The second interpretation was considerably more unsettling. That Camilla, aware of ongoing rumors about tensions in her marriage to Charles and conscious of his uncertain health, was quietly securing her financial independence by moving assets out of any arrangement that could be complicated by future royal proceedings. Buckingham Palace declined to comment, but within palace walls, the move was noticed, and not favorably by everyone. If Camilla is restructuring her private finances, the question naturally arises: what other boundaries between her private life and her royal role are being quietly redrawn? For Princess Anne, this question is not abstract. It connects directly to the situation at Balmoral. If Camilla's children are being positioned, whether intentionally or through gradual assumption, to benefit from royal assets and access as though they were members of the working royal family, and believes that line must be challenged, and when informal pressure fails to produce results, formal legal mechanisms exist precisely for situations like this one. The legal framework around private royal property is genuinely complex. Because Balmoral is personally owned, any dispute over unauthorized use would be handled through civil property law rather than constitutional channels. Unauthorized access to or use of privately owned land in the United Kingdom can constitute trespass, and depending on the nature and extent of that use, civil remedies can include injunctions, financial damages, and formal legal declarations about rights of access. If Princess Anne has indeed moved to formalize her objections through legal channels, as sources have indicated, she would be using entirely legitimate mechanisms to enforce what she sees as a fundamental principle. That royal property is not a family perk for those who have not earned it. The timing of all of this cannot be separated from King Charles's health situation. Since his cancer diagnosis in early 2024, Charles has continued to carry out his duties with notable determination, attending significant engagements, including events related to COP30 and hosting functions at Windsor Castle in January 2026. But the question of succession and estate management hangs over every royal decision right now. When Balmoral eventually passes to Prince William, the arrangements around Camilla's position and her family's access will need to be clearly defined. Vague traditions and assumed entitlements will not survive that transition without formal clarification. Princess Anne understands this better than almost anyone. She has watched the monarchy evolve, bend, and occasionally break under the weight of modern pressures. She supported the slimmed-down monarchy concept that Charles has championed. She has consistently argued, through action more than words, that the royal family's moral authority rests entirely on its commitment to public duty over private comfort. Every time that principle is compromised, whether by a prince fleeing to California, a duke retreating from public life, or a queen's daughter treating a Highland castle as a personal weekend retreat, the institution loses something it cannot easily recover. What happens next is being watched with enormous attention by everyone from constitutional scholars to tabloid editors. If legal proceedings involving Laura Lopez and the use of Balmoral move forward in any formal capacity, it will mark an extraordinary moment in modern royal history. A sitting princess taking legal action against her brother's stepdaughter over the use of a private Highland estate. The optics alone would be seismic. But Princess Anne has never governed herself by optics. She governs herself by principle. And in a royal family that is simultaneously managing a king's cancer treatment, a looming succession, a disgraced duke's financial crisis, and a transatlantic drama with the departed prince, someone has to be the person who holds the line. That person, as it has always been, is Anne, unelected, untitled beyond her birthright, and utterly unapologetic. The most important royal nobody talks about enough, until she makes herself impossible to ignore.